Quarantine, day 15, April 1st. Crazy times here in the Carolinas, but luckily I'm prepared. This is all fishing gear. Gets me out there if I have to catch my food. I don't have to go to the grocery store. I'll be out there catching fish, eating fish. I have all my boats here to access the water. I have my camper if I have to hide in the woods. Quarantine. Math. Ezzy and I both went fishing yesterday. We both caught a fish. Mine weighed 3/4 of a pound. Hers weighed 4/6 of a pound. Whose fish weighed less?
What up, my quarantine people? Back at it again with our guest DJ today, Mr. F, our awesome PE teacher at Ballantyne Elementary School. So we're going to dive right in and answer some questions about fishing. If you are an avid quarantine mather or InstructaBeats follower, you know we love our sides check strategy here. So my statement's going to say blank's fish weighed less, right? So this tells me right now that I'm looking for probably a person's name, okay? And I'm looking for which one weighs less, which means I'm going to be comparing two different things, at least maybe more, right? And if I'm looking for less, that means I'm looking for the smallest. So with that being my guiding light, let's go identify anything about somebody's and what their fish weighs, right? So it said that Mr. F, his fish, when he caught it, was 3/4 of a pound, right? And his daughter, Ezzy, was, caught a fish, and hers was 4/6 of a pound. And then we just simply want to know whose was less. And we already identified that less means smallest. So we're going to do this 3 different ways today. So let's flip the page. So way number 1, we're going to just simply do this with area models. And remember, the key with area models, the reason I actually don't love this strategy, although it's good conceptually when you first start, is sometimes it's really hard to be neat, especially for people like me, who are naturally a little bit messy. And so when you do this, the holes have to be the same size. Okay, so that's not even perfect, but it's pretty close. And so here we have Ferrari, and then we have Ezzy. And we know Mr. Ferrari was 3/4. So to make fourths, I split this into half, right? And remember, fractions are equal parts of a whole. And so although my lines aren't straight, that's pretty good. And I'm going to shade in 3/4 of that. And then Ezzy was 4/6. So for 6, I'm going to split it into thirds as best I can, okay, making equal groups. And then if I split each of those thirds into half, I will have 6, and again, I am shading in 4 of these pieces. And when you do that, right, you can clearly see that 3/4 of a pound is greater than 4/6 of a pound, which, now this is where you really have to be careful, because if you're rushing and you don't look at what your statement said, your statement was asking you for who's weighed less. So your answer that you want to pick for this is Ezzy. Okay, Miss Ferrari's fish was bigger, right? We compared that correctly. It's greater than Ezzy's, but we wanted the smaller fish. All right, so that's the first way. So for way number 2, we're going to do this a very similar thing, but we're going to compare with number lines, because I know in 3rd grade, part of your standards is comparing them with number lines. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make our holes the same size, right? The rule number 1 for comparing fractions is to compare the fractions. The whole has to be the same size. And we talked about that last week, so I didn't spend a lot of time talking about it today. But if you're comparing half of a pizza, right, half of a small pizza to half of a large pizza, a lot of people would say, okay, well, 1/2 is equal to 1/2, but that's not true because the holes are a completely different size. So to compare these fractions, it has to be talking about the same size whole. And of course, for this, it's talking about 1 pound, so they are both the same. So our one whole is going to be the same length, so we can compare them, right? We're going to label this. Here we're going to have Mr. Ferrari. Here we're going to have Ezzy. And again, we're going to split it into fourths. Okay, and we're going to count out 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. And then for Ezzy, we're going to split them into 6 as equally as possible. Okay, there we go. And we're going to count out 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. And you can see that the 3/4 was bigger or more, worth more than the 4/6. So again, 3/4 is greater than 4/6, which again means the person whose fish weighed the least or was the smallest was Ezzy. Okay. Another way to think about this is whose was further away from 1. Mr. Ferrari's was closer to 1 whole, right? Which means his had to be bigger because Ezzy's was further away than 1 whole. So you can actually look at the 0 or the 1. That's kind of higher level thinking. So let's get into way number 3. So way number 3 is how you're going to learn about doing this, hopefully in 4th grade, so that way you're ready for 5th grade. And it's by finding a common denominator. Common denominator just means a denominator that's the same. So I love to do the pattern method here, which is really using the identity property of multiplication which is repeated addition, right? To find a common denominator. And when I do it for 4/6, 6 plus 6 is 12, 4 plus 4 is 8. And so my equivalent fraction for 3/4, there we go, was 9/12. And my equivalent fraction for 4/6 was 8/12. And now that they have the same denominator, you can compare them because 9 is greater than 8, which again means Ezzy had the smallest fish. Any way you sliced it, right, or any way you wanted to do it, Ezzy's fish was smaller. But we love to show you the 3 different ways, especially the area models and number lines. We recommend you start with that and then work your way into finding common denominators and using your benchmark fractions 1/2 to compare them, although both of these were bigger than 1/2, which is why we had to do the other ways for this one. All right. Thank you so much for checking out. I know when Mr. F gets done fishing, he's going to wash his hands. He's not going to touch his face. If he's feeling sick, he's going to stay inside. And as always, remember, stay safe, do math. I'm out.